Do you start every screenplay out with an outline?
I first start with a notebook. Once I've decided, okay, this is a project that I want to write, I buy a notebook for it. I usually try to sort of theme the notebook. So if it's like a old like pirate adventure, I'll try to make it look, I'll find a notebook that looks like that. And then I will just use that notebook to just freehand write anything I'm interested in regards to this screenplay, whether it's just like a very vague idea of, I think this thing should happen, or I'm writing dialogue for a scene that might exist in the screenplay. I'm sort of filling that notebook up, and I don't really have a timeline at that point. So I'm talking about spec scripts for me. I'm just writing it until hopefully a story will coalesce. And once I feel like that story's coalesced, I'll try to write that story as succinctly as possible. Essentially, I'm trying to write the log line for it. And if that log line is engaging to me and I think will move me, if I think that story that is told, even in that little, one sentence, is moving enough to me, I'll try to take that sentence and I'll turn it into a paragraph. And if that paragraph is moving, then I'll move on. If it's not, I will continue to maybe reshape that paragraph. And then that paragraph will become a page, that page will become multiple pages into sort of a treatment. And then at the treatment, that's when I think I'm doing most of my story work. I'm writing that over and over, and I will do that for a couple months maybe, depending on how often I can work on it. And once that treatment is really resonating with me and is a story that, again, will move me, then I can take it and start writing the draft. And so it almost feels like that draft is more like a translation project than writing something new. I'm taking something that exists in full prose writing and then putting it into a screenplay format. And so all of the little things that exist in a screenplay, that's when I'm putting those things in. Because my story, I already feel incredibly comfortable about. So I don't have to discover any of the story things. I get to just discover all those little things, all those little nooks and crannies that happen when a story is now going to be put on the screen, and I'm translating it there. And then I'll get that first draft, and then from that, I'm moving into rewrites and polishes and all those sort of conversations. But I think it's helped me because I feel like my story usually doesn't go through too many significant changes once I'm on that draft, once I'm in the screenplay software and writing it. Because all those changes, I've hit all those dead ends, all those things that I thought were great that are not, all those things that I was excited about that didn't end up doing anything for me, I've already figured that out in that treatment process. So I don't outline so much as try to just tell a story and tell it fuller and fuller until that's a full, rich story, and then translate it to a screenplay, if that makes sense.
It does. So it almost sounds like this little notebook that you buy that's themed. It's like a scrapbook.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you're putting, it's almost like a part diary, part scrapbook. You're just putting little notes, and it's like filling up, and then by the time you get to the screenplay formatting, it's already its own world in that little book.
Yeah, it already exists, and I have this full treatment that is pretty detailed, and it tells a story. So it's not an outline, because I don't have to discover how this character is going to convince this other character of what they want, because I've done that in the treatment. But now I get to, in the screenplay, figure out what are the exact words that she's using to convince this character about what she wants or something like that. So a lot of the work is, for me, compared to how I think some other people I've heard process, some of that work is kind of split, where it's story stuff here and then sort of screenplay stuff over here when I'm in the software and doing all the screenplay formatting and stuff like that.
Are there any pictures in the little notebook? Do you ever, to help flesh it out or no? Stick figures? Or
no, I don't. I actually don't use pictures. I think it's because I'm a horrible artist, and I don't do clippings or anything like that. I think in every way I've ever been creative, it's always been in words and ideas. And so anytime I've ever tried to translate any of my creative ideas through visual stuff, it just never works. And so I've just, I think, given up on that for now. Maybe at some point I will try to learn how to draw or something like that. But it's probably why I'm a lot more active on Twitter than I am on Instagram, because that's just where I feel the most comfortable.
Sure, sure. And well, Instagram's also very personal and like, hey, this is what I had for lunch, and here's a great photo of it, and
Yeah.
here's me, with so and so. And some people that it's just they're just better sharing links to articles or talking about writing or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever go back and look at those notebooks?
During the process?
Or afterwards, even years later? Like, oh wow, this is this notebook for this. So this notebook became this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I have them on my shelf, and I can see, because they're all different, I can be like, oh, that's that project, that's that one. And every now and then I might flip through one and like, oh yeah, I had that idea for that scene that never ended up anywhere, but there's something I love about this idea, this scene, and it didn't have a home in this project. I thought it did, but maybe it'll go elsewhere. Or I'll see something and I think to myself, why did I ever think that was interesting? Like, who was I at that point that wrote that little scrap of an idea, and why was I interested in that? So it's not just a useful tool creatively, but personally it acts as a little bit of sort of like an idea diary of what I was interested at the time that I wrote that thing.
I think it's cool too that you have it in the theme of whatever the project is.
Yeah, and I definitely have notebooks that are empty, but I was like, that's a cool notebook, but I can't use it yet because I don't have an idea that fits the feeling of that notebook. And sometimes the notebook itself will get me going, oh, I should write a fantasy novel because that notebook looks like a fantasy novel or something like that.
Yeah, I forget which author it was that said, don't buy really pretty notebooks to put like your feelings in or creative write, whatever, because you're going to be too precious because it's so beautiful. If you buy something that it's not even, you don't care too much about, it's like the spiral notebook from the 99-cent store, you're just going to be like, cool, I can put whatever I want, I can just regurgitate it all here, and I don't have to be precious with it. I don't know. That's just a thought. But there's so many beautiful notebooks that you see at bookstores, if people go to bookstores anymore. But I remember back in the day, and it would almost be too intimidating to writing something that's leather bound. And
I feel that way. I keep a personal journal, and it's a lovely leather bound journal. It was a gift from my sister years ago, and I am a little bit intimidated to write because the notebooks for my screenplays, I'm just collecting scraps of ideas, and I feel like I'm just kind of spilling my brain out onto it. But my personal journal, I feel like, what if someone finds this and reads it? I want it to be thoughtful and interesting, and
right.
I want to appear smart. Even though it's for me, I'm still thinking somehow about how this might be seen by others. And it's because this notebook feels like it's something that would be read by others. Whereas those other notebooks for my screenplays, it's like, if that is read by others, that's great, because it's not supposed to be a thing. It's not supposed to be readable. But if this diary would be something that would be read, I would be terrified. And even though it's not, I'm still terrified. And I think it's because it's a really nice journal.
Sure, sure. And it's not, you want to write in the King's English and
Yeah.
a plumed pen or something, whereas the other one, you put whatever profanity, just whatever thoughts.
Yes.
Not that you would be doing that. No.
My handwriting is also terrible. And so I also think about, I need to write legibly in this notebook, because what if someone discovers it years from now and reads it? I want them to not think I couldn't write good handwriting.
Sure, sure. That's interesting, yeah. What moves you when you're writing?
I think what moves me is seeing real people go through something. And I don't know, I'll have to really sort of think think about it. That's not a good answer.
Well, that's why I think a lot of us go to the movies and choose certain types of movies. Some people just want to be entertained and they want a happy ending and a neat little package, and others, they want to see people go through something.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I want to see people go through, and that's what I think. That's why I think it's not good. It's not that it's a bad answer, but I don't think it's as accurate as it could be, because I think that things that move me are real people in extraordinary situations going through something that is incredibly human. And I think that might be why I love Shakespeare so much, particularly the histories, because I will never be King of England, but when I see the King of England talk about what it's like to be up at night, and I know what it's like to be up at night and dealing with something, then I'm now connected in a way to what it might be like to be the King of England. It's just the thing that keeps me up at night is way different than the thing that keeps him up at night. But the fact that we are both have this same experience tells me that that's another human that is going through something that I go through. And we're connected through empathy. And I find it very moving when I see people in these situations that I will never find myself in, but if I was in that situation, I might react the same way because that reaction is a very human reaction. That's what moves me.
Right. This is off on a tangent a bit, but just in watching Masterclass, they had one on political leadership. It's not necessarily a class I would gravitate toward, but it was just really interesting, and I love the framing of it and the way it looked. And they just talked about how a lot of the great presidents forced themselves, Abe Lincoln forced himself to go to the theater, different people to get out of that mindset because they were so focused on what to do with this war or that war. And they were criticized for it, but they needed that time away from it because it did keep them up at night. So that just reminded me of that, where they had to get away from the problem of war and these different things for a short time so that they could come back and try to solve or deal with it.
Yeah.
They needed that escapism.
Yeah. Well, I think that art and art that is storytelling forces us to engage with ideas of ourselves in situations that we might not ever find ourselves in. But when we're forced to think about that, it opens up our minds in ways that we can't get because we just don't get that experience in the real world. So I think that part of the reason we go to the theater and we go to the movies and we watch TV is, even if it's subconscious, it's so that we can experience these lives that we would never experience. But because that's a human life and we're humans, in a way we get to expand our minds in ways that we need to.